My name is Rebecca Wilson, and at 38 years old, I found myself standing at my mother's funeral, bracing for the moment my sister Stephanie would walk in. It had been 6 years since she had stolen Nathan, my millionaire fiancé, the man I had planned to spend my life with, and I hadn't seen either of them since. When they finally entered, Stephanie flaunting her diamond ring with that smug grin, I felt a surprising calm wash over me. Little did she know who was waiting to greet her. Before I share how Stephanie's face drained of color the moment she realized who I had married, tell me where you're watching from and hit subscribe to follow my story, mother. Eleanor was always the cornerstone of our family, growing up in a modest suburb just outside Boston. She taught me what it meant to be strong and dignified. We had a bond that only deepened as I got older. Even after moving into my own apartment in downtown Boston and building my career as a marketing executive, I called her nearly every day. She was my confidant, my advisor, and my biggest supporter. When she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 8 months ago, my world felt like it was collapsing. Despite aggressive treatment, we all knew her time was limited. Yet she faced her illness with remarkable grace, more concerned about how we'd manage without her than about her own pain. Her final weeks were peaceful, surrounded by family in the home where she'd raised us. She slipped away, holding my hand, having made me promise to find peace in my life. 6 years earlier, at 32, my life looked perfect on paper. I had a thriving career, good friends, and a nice apartment, but something was missing. I worked 60-hour weeks and dated occasionally, but nothing serious stuck. Then, I met Nathan Reynolds at a charity gala through my college friend, Allison. Nathan was magnetic, with perfect teeth and a confidence that lit up the room. At 36, he was a self-made tech millionaire, the kind of success story magazines love to feature. Our connection was instant. We shared passions for art, travel, and big dreams. After our first date at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor, I called my mom to tell her I'd met someone special. Our relationship blossomed quickly. Weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, box seats at symphony performances, and intimate dinners became routine. Nathan was attentive and generous, always surprising me with thoughtful gifts and elaborate plans. After 18 months, during a private dinner on a yacht in Boston Harbor, Nathan proposed with a 5-carat diamond ring. I said yes immediately. My parents were ecstatic, especially Mom, who immediately started envisioning the perfect wedding. Nathan had the resources to make any dream come true, and Eleanor insisted we shouldn't hold back. Then there was my younger sister, Stephanie, just 2 years younger than me. Our relationship was complicated. As kids, we were close but constantly competing. Stephanie always wanted what I had, whether toys, friends, or attention. If I achieved something, she felt she had to match or top it. Mom always tried to keep the peace, making sure each of us got special attention. Despite our rocky past, I chose Stephanie as my maid of honor. Mom believed it would bring us closer, and I wanted to believe that, as adults, we'd moved past childhood jealousy. When I introduced Stephanie to Nathan at a family dinner, she showered him with compliments. I noticed her touching his arm while laughing at his jokes, but dismissed it as just her usual charm. We held our engagement party at my parents' colonial home. Stephanie helped Mom with decorations, hanging fairy lights in the backyard and arranging flowers. Throughout the evening, I caught Stephanie watching Nathan from across the room, but when our eyes met, she quickly smiled and raised her glass to me. Later that night, as guests were leaving, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Rebecca, dear, I noticed Stephanie seems quite taken with Nathan," she said carefully, packing leftover appetizers. "She's just being friendly, Mom," I replied, washing champagne flutes. "Besides, she's dating that pharmaceutical rep." Mom nodded, but didn't look convinced. "Just be careful, honey. You know how your sister gets when she wants something you have." I kissed her cheek and assured her everything was fine. We're adults now. Mom Stephanie's happy for me, I'm sure of it. How wrong I was. How devastatingly wrong. 3 months before the wedding, I started noticing subtle changes in Nathan. He worked later hours and answered texts at odd times, blaming international clients. Our usual Friday date nights were often rescheduled for emergency meetings. When we were together, he seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone and only half listening. More troubling, he began criticizing things he once loved about me. My laugh was too loud in public. My favorite blue dress that he used to adore suddenly made me look washed out. And even my habit of reading before bed, which he once found charming, now annoyed him because the light kept him awake. Meanwhile, Stephanie started calling more often, always with questions about the wedding. "I just want everything to be perfect for my big sister," she'd say. Though Mom was handling most of the planning, Stephanie volunteered to attend vendor meetings I couldn't make because of work. One Thursday evening, Nathan and I had dinner at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. He barely looked at me, giving one-word answers when I talked about work. When his phone buzzed for the fifth time, I'd had enough. "Is there something more important going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light despite my frustration. "Sorry, just work stuff," he muttered, flipping his phone face down. "You know how it is before a product launch." Later that week, I smelled unfamiliar perfume on Nathan's collar while doing laundry. It was floral and heavy, nothing like my subtle scent. When I confronted him, Nathan said he'd been in meetings all day with a potential investor, Rebecca Mills, who apparently wore strong perfume and hugged him goodbye. The explanation sounded plausible, and I wanted to believe him the next morning. I met my friend Allison for coffee and shared my worries. "Every relationship gets shaky before the wedding," Allison reassured me, stirring her latte. "Parker and I fought all the time the month before our wedding, and now we've been married 5 years." But the knot in my stomach didn't ease. Mom noticed my anxiety during our weekly lunch. "You seem distracted, sweetheart," she said, reaching across the table to hold my hand. "Wedding stress? Or something else?" I forced a smile, telling myself I was just caught up in final wedding preparations and that everything was fine. Though deep down, I knew it wasn't. Determined, I started putting in extra effort, hoping maybe I'd been taking Nathan for granted. Booking a spa day, buying new lingerie, cooking his favorite dishes. But the more I tried, the further he seemed to drift away. Then came the cake tasting appointment Nathan had eagerly anticipated for weeks. That morning, he called with an excuse about a surprise meeting with investors and suggested Stephanie go with me instead, since she already knew his cake preferences. After hanging up, a sick feeling settled in my stomach. How could my sister know my fiancé's cake choices better than I did? Still, I accepted her company. The next day, while cleaning Nathan's car before a dinner party, I spotted a silver dangling earring wedged between the passenger seat and center console. Adorned with a tiny sapphire I instantly recognized as Stephanie's. It was the pair she'd worn at my engagement party, a gift from our grandmother. When I confronted Nathan with the earring that evening, his expression stayed calm. "Oh, your sister must have dropped it when I gave her a ride to the florist last week," he said smoothly. "She mentioned losing one." "You never told me you drove Stephanie to the florist," I said quietly. "Didn't I? Must have slipped my mind, it wasn't important." When I called Stephanie, her story matched his perfectly, too perfectly. "Thank goodness! I've been searching everywhere for that earring. Nathan was kind enough to drive me since my car's in the shop." That night, sleep eluded me as my mind raced. Had they rehearsed their story? Was I just paranoid? The stress made me lose weight and gave me dark circles under my eyes. I started seeing a therapist without telling Nathan. 3 weeks before the wedding, Nathan suggested postponing. "I'm worried about you, Rebecca. You're not yourself lately. Maybe we're rushing." I broke down, pleading for him to tell me what was wrong, what I'd done, how to fix it. He held me and reassured me it was fine. But his eyes looked empty that night. I woke at 3 a.m. to find Nathan's side of the bed empty. From the hallway came hushed voices from the guest bedroom. "Not now, she'll hear us." I know soon, I promise." The next day, I decided to surprise Nathan at work with lunch. Just as I was leaving, my father Thomas called. "Rebecca, are you eating properly? Your mother says you've lost too much weight. We're worried." "I'm fine, Dad. Just pre-wedding jitters. Actually, I'm bringing Nathan lunch now." "Good." That boy better treat my daughter like a queen. If only he knew, at Nathan's building. The security guard smiled and waved me through. On the elevator to the 12th floor, I checked my reflection, trying to smooth the worry lines between my eyebrows. I carried Nathan's favorite sandwich from the deli near my office. At the reception desk, Nathan's secretary Margot looked up, surprised. "Rebecca, we weren't expecting you today." Her eyes flicked toward Nathan's closed office door, then back. "He's in a meeting." "That's okay," I said, lifting the lunch bag. "I just brought him lunch, I can wait." Margot stood quickly, blocking my way. "Actually, he asked not to be disturbed. I can let him know you're here." Something about her nervousness set off alarms. "Is he alone in there, Margot?" She hesitated, confirming all I feared. Before she could speak, I stepped past and pushed open Nathan's office door. The sight is burned into my memory. Nathan leaning against his desk, hands on my sister's waist, her arms around his neck, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. They didn't notice me at first, giving me agonizing seconds to take in every detail. Stephanie's skirt riding up, Nathan's loosened tie. The familiarity of their embrace speaking volumes of countless such moments. When the door clicked shut behind me, they sprang apart. 3 faces frozen in shock. "Rebecca!" Nathan was the first to recover, straightening his tie. "This isn't what it looks like." Stephanie didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she lifted her chin defiantly. "We didn't plan this. It just happened." A strange calm washed over me. "How long?" Nathan glanced to Stephanie, then back at me. "Rebecca, let's discuss this privately." "How long?" I repeated, steady. "Months," Stephanie said. "Since the engagement party." Months. Almost half our engagement. While I'd been selecting invitations, flowers, they were betraying me. Nathan moved behind his desk, putting space between us like a businessman bracing for negotiation. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Rebecca. Sometimes feelings change. I was going to tell you after." "After what?" "For the wedding. After the honeymoon, I was trying to find the right moment." His voice was as smooth as when he handled difficult client meetings. The lunch bag slipped from my hand. "Had trusted both of you." Stephanie looked uncomfortable for once. "It just happened." "Don't call me Becca." The childhood nickname felt like another betrayal. "Nothing just happens over 4 months. You made choices. Every secret call, every lie, every time you looked me in the eye, knowing what you were doing." Nathan pressed the intercom. "Margot, please come in." Moments later, Margot appeared, avoiding my gaze. "Please escort Rebecca out. She's upset." "I'm escorting myself out," I said, somehow still holding on to my dignity, despite feeling broken inside. "You deserve each other." In the elevator, the tears finally came. By the time I reached my car, I could barely breathe through the sobs. The drive home is a blur. All I remember is calling my mother from my apartment, curled up on the bathroom floor. Unable to speak through my crying, Mom and Dad arrived within the hour, using their spare key. When I couldn't open the door, Mom held me as I spilled everything. Dad paced the living room, growing redder with every detail. "Oh, I'll kill him," he muttered, hand over his heart. "Both of them." "Thomas, your blood pressure," Mom warned, though her own face was filled with equal fury. The next days passed in a haze of pain. Mom helped me cancel wedding vendors, while Dad handled the finances. When I returned the engagement ring to Nathan's apartment, leaving it with the doorman because I couldn't face him, I found Stephanie had already moved in, her clothes filling the space, family photos arranged on shelves that once held mine. Nathan's email about dividing our shared assets was clinical and detached, mentioning that Stephanie had helped him list out my remaining belongings. The depth of their betrayal hit me harder than I expected. Through mutual friends, I found out they'd been secretly meeting whenever I worked late or traveled for business. Stephanie had actively pursued him, creating excuses to meet him alone and sending texts and photos when I wasn't around. The scandal quickly spread through our social circle. Some friends took my side. Others sided with Nathan because of his influence in the business world. Several admitted they'd noticed the flirting between Nathan and Stephanie, but avoided getting involved. Their cowardice stung nearly as much as the betrayal itself. During those dark months, Mom became my anchor. She brought me food when I couldn't eat, listened to my tear-filled rants, and stayed overnight when the loneliness overwhelmed me. She kept trying to mediate between Stephanie and me, inviting us both to family dinners that always ended in awkward silence or bitter fights. At one dinner, Stephanie snapped after I refused to pass the salt. "You always got everything first, Rebecca. The grades, the job, the apartment. For once, I got something before you did." "My fiancé isn't a prize to win," I replied, voice trembling. "He's the man I love and trust." Mom set down her fork. "Stephanie Marie Thompson, apologize to your sister right now." "For what? Being honest? Nathan chose me. He loves me now." I threw my napkin down. "I can't do this anymore." "Mom, I'm sorry." That was the last family dinner I attended with Stephanie there. Dad's heart problems worsened from the stress of our feud, needing medication changes and more doctor visits. Mom aged years and months, the lines on her face deepening as she fought to keep the family together. 6 months after discovering Nathan and Stephanie's betrayal, I hit my lowest point. My therapist diagnosed me with depression and recommended medication. Work suffered. I lost a major client after breaking down during a disastrous presentation. My boss suggested taking a leave of absence, but staying in Boston, where memories haunted every street, felt unbearable. When a marketing director position opened in Chicago, I applied immediately. The interview went surprisingly well, my desperation probably coming through as enthusiasm. 2 weeks later, I got the offer. Mom helped me pack, carefully wrapping photos and keepsakes in tissue paper. While sorting through my things, she asked the question hanging between us: "Will you ever forgive Stephanie?" I kept folding sweaters without looking up. "I don't know, Mom. Not now, maybe never." "Forgiveness isn't about them deserving it," she said softly. "It's about freeing yourself." "I'm freeing myself. I'm moving to Chicago." Mom sat beside me, taking my hands. "Running away isn't healing, sweetheart." Tears filled my eyes. "I need space to even start healing. Can you understand that?" She nodded and pulled me into a tight hug. "Promise you'll call. Promise you won't shut us out completely." "I promise." Saying goodbye was harder than I imagined. Dad held me longer than usual, voice rough with feeling. "Show them, kiddo. Build a life so good they choke on regret." My first weeks in Chicago were lonely and filled with doubt. My studio apartment felt cold and unfamiliar. I worked long hours to avoid going home to empty rooms, eating takeout at my desk, crashing exhausted each night. Then came news that twisted the knife deeper. One Sunday morning, Mom called cautiously. "Rebecca, you should hear this from me before social media. Stephanie and Nathan got married yesterday." The small civil ceremony was covered in Boston Magazine Society pages, thanks to Nathan's business connections, despite its modest size. The photos showed them smiling outside the courthouse, Stephanie in a simple white dress, my old engagement ring proudly on her finger. That night was my lowest. I drank a whole bottle of wine alone, scrolling through old photos of Nathan and me, crying until my eyes swelled shut. I called in sick the next day, unable to face the world. But during those dark hours, something shifted. As morning light filtered through my blinds, I decided that would be the last day I let them control my happiness. I deleted every photo of Nathan from my phone, blocked him and Stephanie on social media, and took a long shower, imagining my pain washing away. At work, I threw myself into projects with fresh focus. My boss noticed and gave me bigger clients. I earned a reputation for creativity and dedication, gaining respect at the new office. My first real friend in Chicago was Madison Reynolds, the RHR director, who invited me to her book club. Through her, I met other women and slowly built a social circle. Madison often tried to set me up on dates, but I declined. The idea of romantic vulnerability terrified me. Months into my new life, I was sent to a tech conference in San Francisco to represent the company. On the second night, I attended a business dinner and sat next to Zachary Foster, a tech investor and entrepreneur, recently relocated from Seattle. Zachary was nothing like Nathan, quiet, genuine, and understated. His calm confidence and thoughtful questions drew people in without demanding attention. When he spoke about his work, his passion shone without boastfulness. After dinner, he asked for my card, and I gave it with no expectations. To my surprise, he emailed the next morning, inviting me to continue our chat about digital marketing over coffee before the day's sessions over the next 3 months. Zachary and I kept professional contact. He referred clients to my agency, and I introduced him to Chicago business connections. Madison noticed our frequent lunches and raised an eyebrow. "He likes you, Rebecca, not just professionally." "We're just colleagues," I insisted. "Colleagues don't look at each other the way he looks at you." Eventually, Zachary invited me to dinner at a place unrelated to work. I panicked, almost twice, before forcing myself to go 20 minutes into the date. While talking about our favorite books, I had a full panic attack. My hands trembled, breathing got hard, and tears filled my eyes. Rather than reacting with embarrassment or irritation, Zachary slid over to sit beside me, speaking softly and steadily until my breathing evened out. He drove me home that night without pressing for answers or making me feel uncomfortable. The very next day, a bouquet arrived at my office accompanied by a note. "No pressure, no expectations. Just hoping you're feeling better, Zachary." That evening, I called him and poured out everything. The Betrayal by Nathan and Stephanie. He listened intently without interruption, then shared his own story of heartbreak. His marriage ended when his wife left him for his business partner, taking half their company in the divorce. "Broken trust leaves scars," he said gently. "Anyone worth your time understands healing isn't a straight line." Over the following months, we built our relationship on friendship first. Zachary never pushed me beyond what I was ready to give. He respected my boundaries, but stayed steadfastly present. On our fifth date, instead of a noisy restaurant that might trigger my anxiety, he cooked dinner at his apartment. When panic surfaced, he knew exactly how to soothe me through it. For the first time since Nathan, I allowed myself to believe that trust might be possible again. 1 year after relocating to Chicago, my life was almost unrecognizable. I'd earned a promotion to senior marketing director with a corner office overlooking the river. My circle of friends had grown beyond Madison to include several close confidants. And, most surprisingly, I had fallen deeply in love with Zachary. Unlike Nathan's flashy gestures, Zachary's love showed itself in steady, thoughtful ways. He remembered the little things, how I took oat milk in my coffee, which true crime podcasts I followed. He respected my independence while offering unwavering support. Most importantly, he never compared me to anyone or tried to change me. When his sister Caroline visited from Portland, we connected immediately and exchanged numbers, developing our own friendship separate from Zachary. She shared stories of their Seattle childhood, painting a picture of the man I was growing to love. My relationship with my parents continued from afar. I called Mom weekly, carefully steering conversations away from Stephanie. Dad sometimes joined, his gruff voice softening as he told me how proud he was of my fresh start. I visited twice that year, timing trips when Stephanie and Nathan were away. Mom kept me updated occasionally. Their marriage looked perfect on social media, Stephanie posting photos from luxury vacations and charity galas. According to Mom, they'd bought a large house in Beacon Hill and were doing extensive renovations. "Stephanie asks about you sometimes," Mom mentioned during one call. "What do you tell her?" I asked, stirring sauce on the stove. "That you're doing well, building a new life." "Does she ever express regret?" "In her way," Mom said quietly. "She gets silent when your name comes up." My therapy continued in Chicago, where my new therapist helped me process betrayal and build healthier relationship patterns. I learned to recognize triggers and communicate boundaries better. Nightmares about Nathan and Stephanie faded. In June, Zachary surprised me with a weekend trip to Michigan's wine country. We stayed at a charming bed and breakfast, surrounded by vineyards, spent afternoons wine tasting, and evenings watching sunsets over Lake Michigan. For the first time in years, I felt fully present and genuinely happy without the shadow of past pain. On our last night, walking through early summer blooms at the Chicago Botanic Garden, Zachary stopped beneath a trellis covered in climbing roses. "Rebecca," he said, taking both my hands, "this past year, knowing you has been the greatest gift of my life." When he knelt and pulled a ring box from his pocket, panic flickered briefly. Images of Nathan's proposal threatened to cloud the moment, but looking into Zachary's eyes, I saw only sincerity and love. "I'm not asking for an answer today," he said, sensing my hesitation. "Whenever you're ready, tomorrow or next year, I'll be here." Tears welled in my eyes, but not from fear or pain. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm ready now." The ring was understated, an elegant emerald flanked by small diamonds, reflecting the simplicity and depth of our relationship, nothing like Nathan's ostentatious diamond. That night, I called my parents with the news. Mom cried happy tears. "He sounds wonderful, darling. When can we meet him?" "Soon," I promised, "very soon." We planned a small wedding, just 30 guests, at a historic Chicago venue. At Mom's urging, I sent Stephanie an invitation, more as a gesture toward healing than an expectation she'd attend. Her reply arrived via email, brief and cold. "Congratulations on your engagement. Unfortunately, Nathan and I have prior commitments that day. Best wishes for your future." Mom was disappointed, but not surprised. "Give her time, Rebecca. This is progress compared to before." Our wedding day was intimate and joyful, surrounded by my parents, new friends, and Zachary's family. Dad walked me down the aisle, whispering, "I haven't seen you this happy in years, kiddo." Zachary's vows acknowledged our journey. "Rebecca, I promise to remember that love is both strong and fragile. Needing care and commitment every day, I vow to be worthy of the trust you've given me, knowing how precious and rare that gift is." We built our life in Chicago, buying and renovating a brownstone together. My career continued upward. Eventually reaching a vice president role, Zachary's investment firm flourished, focusing on supporting women-led tech startups. During a dinner with business associates, I learned something linking my past to my present. One venture capitalist mentioned working with Nathan years ago. "Reynolds?" "Yeah, he and Foster had a fierce rivalry in the angel investing scene about 7 years back. Foster backed the right startup. Reynolds backed the competitor. Foster's pick got acquired for millions. Reynolds went bankrupt." That night, I asked Zachary about this. "I was going to tell you eventually." He admitted, "I knew who you were when we met at that conference. Not the details, but that you'd been engaged to Reynolds." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "I wanted you to know me for me, not someone tied to your past." I wasn't angry. Somehow, the cosmic symmetry felt fitting. 2 years into our marriage, we began trying for a baby. Months passed without success, leading to fertility specialists and hard conversations. Through the disappointments and procedures, Zachary stayed my rock, holding me through tears and reminding me family comes in many forms. The crushing news of Mom's cancer diagnosis arrived like a storm. Zachary and I immediately flew to Boston, sitting down with oncologists and helping my parents navigate treatment options. Mom faced the grim reality with courage, but the cancer was aggressive and had already spread extensively. I took a leave from work to care for her. Moving back into the home where I'd grown up, Zachary came every weekend, offering support to me and my increasingly fragile father. In her final days, Mom and I shared heartfelt conversations about love, life, and family bonds. One evening, as I adjusted her pillows, she brought up Stephanie. "I hope you two can find peace," she murmured, voice fragile yet resolute. "Life's too short to hold on to such distance between sisters." "I know, Mom," I whispered, choking back tears. "Promise me you'll try, Rebecca. Not for her sake, but for your own. And maybe for me." I gave her that promise, uncertain if I could keep it, but desperate to bring her comfort. 3 days later, Mom passed quietly, with Zachary, Dad, and me by her side. Without hesitation, I called Stephanie. The first time in years we'd spoken directly. "Mom's gone," I said softly when she answered. The sharp intake of breath on the other end hung heavy. "I'll be there in an hour," she said at last, her voice breaking. We met at our parents' house, sharing a brief, awkward hug, before turning to Dad and funeral arrangements. The true challenge lay ahead at the funeral, where old wounds and fresh grief would collide alongside Mom's last wish. The morning of the funeral dawned cold and gray, the drizzle matching the somber mood. Standing in my childhood bedroom, I adjusted my black dress, wondering how I would make it through the day. Zachary appeared behind me, dressed sharply in a dark suit, placing gentle hands on my shoulders. "I'm here with you," he said, meeting my gaze in the mirror. "No matter what happens." Downstairs, Dad sat at the kitchen table, his eyes vacant as he stared at his untouched coffee. The past week had hollowed him out completely. His once tall frame was stooped with grief. At 72, he looked years older than before Mom's diagnosis. "Ready, Dad?" I asked softly, resting my hand on his shoulder. He nodded. Standing slowly, Mom used to say, "Funerals aren't for those who leave us, but for those who remain." I hadn't understood until now. At the funeral home, family and friends were already gathering. I stayed close to Dad, offering forced smiles and accepting condolences from barely familiar faces. Cousins from California, Mom's college roommate, longtime neighbors from my parents' neighborhood. "You're the spitting image of Eleanor at your age," my great-aunt Patricia said, patting my cheek. "She'd be proud of the woman you've become." "How have you been, dear?" asked Mom's friend Judith. "Eleanor mentioned you moved away Chicago, right?" "Yes, almost 5 years now," I answered carefully, keeping silent about Stephanie's betrayal that had driven me from Boston. As I helped Dad find his seat in the front row, Zachary took the other side, and a murmur spread through the crowd. Turning, I saw Stephanie and Nathan entering, drawing stares and whispers alike. Stephanie wore an elegant black dress that accentuated her slim figure, diamond earrings sparkling in the light. Nathan looked uncomfortable in his tailored suit, his arm wrapped around Stephanie's waist in a display of solidarity. Her left hand rested conspicuously on her purse, flaunting a massive diamond engagement ring paired with a wedding band. Dad stiffened next to me. "Thomas, breathe," I whispered, fearing for his heart. They moved forward, pausing to greet various guests. I kept my gaze fixed ahead, focusing on a large photo of Mom beside her closed casket, her warm smile softening some of my tension. Eventually, they reached the front. Stephanie embraced Dad, who returned the hug stiffly. Nathan shook Dad's hand, receiving only a curt nod in return. "Rebecca," Stephanie said, turning toward me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "It's been a long time." "Yes," I replied quietly, unable to trust my voice with more. Nathan gave an awkward nod. "Sorry for your loss." Zachary had stepped away to speak with the funeral director, leaving me momentarily alone with them. Seizing the opportunity, Stephanie said, "I need to speak with you privately." Motioning toward a nearby side room, against my better judgment, I followed her, hoping to avoid a scene during Mom's funeral. The small room contained only a few chairs and a box of tissues. Clearly intended for mourners seeking privacy, Stephanie closed the door behind us. Up close, I noticed faint lines near her eyes that even expensive makeup couldn't conceal. "You look thin," she remarked, studying me critically. "Grief does that," I replied flatly. She nervously twisted her ring around her finger. "Nathan and I bought a summer house on Cape Cod last month. 8 bedrooms, private beach access." I remained silent, wondering why she felt the need to share this. "We're thinking of starting a family soon. Nathan's company recently acquired 2 startups, and we're renovating the 3rd floor for a nursery." "Congratulations," I said, voice hollow. "Is there something you wanted to discuss about the funeral?" Her smile turned sharp and biting. "I just thought you'd want to know how well we're doing." "Poor you. Still alone at 38, I got the man, the money, and the mansion." The old sting flared briefly, then faded. 6 years ago, her words would have devastated me. Now they felt pitiful and desperate. I smiled genuinely. "Have you met my husband yet?" Her expression faltered. "Husband Zachary," I said, opening the door to reveal him waiting nearby. "Come meet my sister." As Zachary stepped inside, Nathan appeared behind him, watching our interaction closely. When the two men's eyes met, Nathan's face drained of color. "Foster," he muttered, confidence cracking. "Reynolds." Zachary's voice was professional, but cool. "It's been, 7 years, since Macintosh acquired Initech over your client CompuServe, right?" Nathan swallowed hard. "You two are married." "2 wonderful years now," I confirmed, slipping my hand into Zachary's. "Zachary Foster," Stephanie repeated slowly. "Oh, as in Foster Investments?" "The same," Zachary replied. "Rebecca and I met at a tech conference in San Francisco." Nathan tried to regain composure. "Foster, we should catch up sometime. I've been meaning to reach out about possible collaborations." "My schedule's full," Zachary said firmly but politely. "You can contact my office if you'd like." At that moment, the funeral director appeared, informing us the service was about to begin. As we returned to the main room, hushed whispers trailed behind us. The connection between Zachary and Nathan evidently well known in their business circles. We had barely taken our seats when Father suddenly clutched his chest, his face twisting in pain. "Dad!" I cried, as Zachary immediately dialed for help. We hurriedly moved him to a private room, causing the funeral to be momentarily delayed. A doctor among the guests examined him and concluded it was likely stress. "Not another heart attack," Stephanie followed us, genuine concern softening her usual demeanor. "Is he okay? Should we call an ambulance?" Her voice trembled slightly. "The doctor says he's stable," I replied, surprised by her sincerity, just overwhelmed. For 20 tense minutes, we sat together in uneasy silence, united only by worry for Father. When he insisted on continuing with the service, we returned to the main hall, the brief scare forging an unexpected truce. The funeral itself was both beautiful and heart-wrenching. I delivered a eulogy celebrating Mother's kindness, strength, and unwavering love for our family. When Stephanie rose to speak after me, she faltered after just a few sentences, tears flooding her eyes. Without hesitation, I stepped to her side and placed a comforting hand on her back. It's okay," I whispered gently. "Take your time." She collected herself and finished her tribute, sharing childhood memories that brought tears and soft laughter from those gathered. At the cemetery, a gentle rain fell as we laid Mother to rest. I spotted Nathan standing apart from the crowd, checking his watch repeatedly. Stephanie stayed close to Father, her earlier bravado replaced by genuine sorrow. The reception at my parents' house was crowded with well-wishers, bringing casseroles and sharing stories. Nathan drank heavily, his discomfort apparent, as several business associates engaged Zachary in lively conversation. I overheard snippets about Nathan's company struggling with recent acquisitions and wondered if Stephanie's boasting had been masking financial troubles. Throughout the day, I maintained the dignity Mother would have expected, focusing on supporting Father and honoring her memory rather than dwelling on past wounds. As guests began to leave, I noticed Stephanie watching me from across the room, her expression unreadable, yet somehow softer than before. The day after the funeral, Zachary needed to return to Chicago for an important board meeting. "Are you sure you'll be okay if I go?" he asked, packing his overnight bag. "I can reschedule. Dad needs help sorting through Mom's things," I explained. "I should stay a few more days." "I'll be fine." After seeing Zachary off at the airport, I returned to my parents' house to find Father sitting in Mother's garden with a photo album open on his lap. "She labeled everything," he said, showing me Mom's neat handwriting beneath each picture. "Said someday we'd appreciate knowing who was who." That afternoon, I began the painful task of sorting through Mother's closet. Each dress held memories, The blue one from my college graduation, the floral print she wore to Sunday brunches, the elegant gray she chose for my engagement party. As I worked, I found myself talking to her, sharing stories of my life in Chicago, my work, and my happiness with Zachary. In her bedside drawer, I discovered a soft, leather-bound journal inside. Mom had written periodic entries over the past decade. Many mentioned her daughters, her hopes for our reconciliation, her sorrow over the rift between us. The final entry, dated just 2 weeks before her passing, read, "My greatest regret is leaving with my girls still estranged. Eleanor always fixed things, but this time I couldn't. I prayed somehow we'd find our way back to each other." The doorbell rang as I wiped away tears. Through the front window, I saw Stephanie standing alone on the porch. Nathan's car was nowhere in sight. Father had gone to his brother's for dinner, leaving me alone to face my sister. I opened the door, uncertain what to expect. "Hi," she said simply. "Can I come in?" In the kitchen, I made coffee, while Stephanie sat silently at the table. Without Nathan beside her, she seemed smaller somehow, less composed. "Where's Nathan?" I finally asked, placing a mug before her. "At home, he doesn't know I'm here." She wrapped her hands around the mug, but didn't take a sip. "I told him I needed space after the funeral." The silence stretched between us, years of unspoken words forming an almost tangible barrier. "I'm sorry about yesterday," she finally said. "What I said in that room at the funeral home was cruel and completely inappropriate." I nodded, acknowledging her apology, but not yet forgiving. "I saw Mom's journal," she continued. "Dad showed it to me last night. Her last wish was for us to reconcile." "I found it too," I replied. "But reconciliation needs more than proximity, Stephanie. It requires honesty." She looked up, tears filling her eyes. "You want honesty? Here it is. I've been miserable, Rebecca. I've been almost from the start." Then the dam broke. Words pouring out through sobs, Nathan changed soon after their wedding, becoming controlling and critical. His business had been struggling for years. Each new acquisition was an attempt to save a sinking ship. The houses, the cars, the vacations, all leveraged on mounting debt. Their marriage was a carefully constructed facade, maintained for business connections and social standing. "He monitors my spending, checks my phone, questions my every move," she admitted. "The Nathan you knew doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did." "Why stay?" I asked gently. "Shame," she answered immediately. "How could I admit that what I'd done to you destroyed our family for something that turned out to be a mirage? And then there's the prenup I leave with nothing." I pushed Mom's journal across the table. "Read the rest of her entries." As Stephanie read, fresh tears streamed down her face. She looked up, raw with emotion. She knew she saw through everything Mom always did. "I know," I said. "I've hated myself for years." Stephanie whispered. "Every time Mom mentioned you, every one of your accomplishments," she shared them with pride. I felt the weight of her confession settle between us. "I'm planning to leave him, Rebecca. I've been secretly consulting a lawyer." My emotions were mixed. Vindication tangled with unexpected compassion. The sister who had caused me so much pain was suffering consequences no one should endure. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued. "I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know the truth before I blow up my life again." We spent the next few hours sifting through Mom's belongings together, sharing memories both painful and precious. Stephanie recalled how Mom taught us to bake cookies and never made separate batches, even though I liked chocolate chip and Stephanie preferred sugar cookies. "Remember how she used to leave notes in our lunchboxes?" Stephanie asked, smiling through tears. Each day brought a new message, never repeating the same words, and I nodded silently. Healing wasn't instant. Our wounds ran too deep for quick fixes. But as evening fell, a subtle shift took place between us. Mother's enduring love was weaving a fragile bridge over years of pain. "What's next for you?" I asked as Stephanie got ready to leave. I'll file for divorce when my lawyer says it's the right moment. Find a small apartment, start fresh. She hesitated at the doorway. And you? Are you heading back to Chicago? Yes, that's where my life is now. With Zachary. You seem genuinely happy, she observed. More a statement than a question. I truly am. Good. At least one of us is. We exchanged a brief, somewhat awkward hug before she walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start returning to Chicago. I settled into my life with Zachary, our renovated brownstone, and a career that fulfilled me. Half a year after Mom's funeral, after years of trying, I found out I was expecting. The joy came tinged with sadness, knowing Mom wouldn't meet her grandchild, though I felt her presence in quiet moments. Stephanie and I kept a cautious connection through sporadic phone calls. She had filed for divorce, moved into a modest apartment, and found work at a small marketing firm. The gossip and judgment she endured in Boston's social circles were harsh, but she appeared determined to rebuild an authentic life. The path that led me here was never one I would have chosen. Losing Nathan had once felt like the end of everything, yet it turned out to be the beginning of a far better chapter. With Zachary, I found not just love, but a true partnership, respect, and unwavering support. His success didn't overshadow mine. Rather, it complemented it. Together, we grew stronger. Mom had been right. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves, not others. Slowly, the weight of anger and bitterness lifted, allowing me to view my past with clarity and my future with hope. The scars remained, but they no longer defined who I was. Sitting in our nursery, while Zachary painted the walls a gentle shade of green, I reflected on the lessons I hope to share with our child. How loss can lead to discovery, how endings create room for new beginnings, and how the hardest trials often guide us toward our true path. My life had blossomed into something richer and more genuine than I could have imagined in those dark days 6 years ago. Not in spite of the betrayal, but because it forced me to rebuild with wisdom and intention. Have you ever experienced a painful loss that eventually brought you something better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if my journey spoke to you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to know that pain doesn't have the final say in their story. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most difficult chapters lead to the most beautiful endings. Don't forget to leave a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe for more tales of resilience and unexpected blessings.